Hi, everybody. Good Tuesday evening to you. It's region weather meteorologist Matt Wentz. We've got the stormy pattern setting up across the northern tier of the country. A lot of that rolling our way, as we've been talking about over the last couple days. And we've got some storms that are a little bit closer as well that'll eventually get into northwest Indiana. But boy, they're taking their time. So I want to take you through the radars here this evening. We'll let a couple people join and then we'll get started here. And as always, this is going to be quick. I want to try to get you through this because there's nothing immediate that we need to be worried about. I want to give you more of a forecasting aspect in terms of what I'm expecting the rest of the evening. But in terms of questions, if you have them, go ahead and ask them towards the end of this. We'll let you know when it's okay to do that. Be happy to answer those. And we'll get you on your way here with likely another update coming later on this evening once these storms are a little bit closer. Okay, so that's kind of how we'll go here. Hi, Greg. Thanks for joining us. Don Z, good evening. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel. Emma, hi. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Kathy, hello as well. All right, let's get started, everybody. So here's what we got going on. You're probably noticing, looking up, we've got that big shield of clouds coming overhead. That is a harbinger of what we've got happening to the north and west of that, which is a big explosive thunderstorm growth again in the heating of the day. Those cap and head over the stable layer of the atmosphere. They shoot out into space, some 50 to 60,000 feet. Jet stream takes them, and then we've got this shield of clouds that the jet stream takes coming overhead. So these are off of the storms that are north and west of us. So looking at the presentation here on satellite, you can see the explosive nature of these storms up in areas just northwest of Chicago, southern Wisconsin. Once again, we've seen some pretty decent storms ongoing out towards the Fort Wayne area, stretching back into Ohio. And then you can't help but notice this big beast out towards the west. This is the derecho that's went through South Dakota. It's now heading into Iowa right now. They've had winds up to 95 miles per hour with this. This storm is legit well off towards the west. It's weakened a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean, we've still got winds 60 to 70 miles per hour with this. But it is a long-lived, large cluster of thunderstorms that will continue to track off towards the east. There's no signs of that stopping. So this is the satellite presentation showing the clouds. If we throw the overlay of the radar on here, you can see what we're dealing with. Pretty decent storms off towards the north. These are producing likely some flooding right now in areas of southern Wisconsin. They've been just kind of sitting over that area. They're now starting to work south. You notice how we're quiet here across the region. Remember, I talked about this morning on our morning post on regionweather.com and on our Facebook page about the temperatures coming down today. We've already seen that temp drop near the lakeshore. Gary down into the 70s right now. The wind has shifted off the lake and our instabilities come down a little bit as well. This is all as expected as this frontal boundaries kind of sag to the south. So we're a little bit more stable near the lakeshore. You've noticed those temperatures have crashed in the last hour or so. That will continue to work inland as well. But again, that's not a big focus of the forecast. The big focus of the forecast is where these storms go. And so we've got a frontal boundary just off towards our north that kind of sags south across northwest Indiana and then heads over towards Fort Wayne, South Bend. These storms are ongoing. We haven't seen anything develop over us yet. We continue to watch that cumulus field. You see some of those cumulus clouds outside that will continue to try to grow. But I think where we go the rest of the evening is these storms up towards Chicago will eventually start bubbling their way down towards the south over the next couple hours. We may get on some of those. Those have had some strong winds, some hail, in addition to some very heavy rain with those. And again, that would be about an hour or two out if those get in. The bigger story beyond that is this derecho out in the Plain States. It's heading through Iowa pretty quickly. It's moving out towards the east around 60 miles per hour. So we're talking highway speeds on this. If we were to time this out, it's still about 300 miles away. So doing some simple math on that, we got about another 5 hours before this thing gets here. So that would place it, 7:30 local time right now. That would place it at midnight or beyond, like the 12:30 time frame, if that continues on its current trajectory. Experience would tell me that this thing may start to speed up a little bit. What happens is you can kind of see the feature on it. It's almost like it really is its own unique storm system, but it's almost like a mini cold front. So you get a cold front that stretches through here. You have the warm front out in advance of it. And this little area of rotation, you can kind of see it. That's what we call a cold pool. So if you get this big cluster of storms like we have with this derecho out in the plains, you get a lot of rain falling. That rain brings down cooler air. And that cooler air serves as cold air that kind of comes out in advance of that storm and keeps the storm going. So there's no sign of the storm stopping because it's got nothing but instability out ahead of it. I've showed this before. You see all these lines that I've thrown on here as well. The reds are areas of extreme instability, whereas the purples out over the lake and off towards our north is where you have lower instability. And these clusters of storms tend to follow that instability gradient where you have the really unstable air, which we have outside right now, and then the less stable air off towards the north. That's kind of the track that these follow. They'll also follow right along where this warm frontal boundary is, which is where the storms are right now. So trajectory continues to take it right along this line, which would bring it in here again around the midnight time frame or just beyond. I would probably say midnight just because I think this will speed up a little bit as we go through time. As that cold pool gets more established, it really helps to push the system along, which in turn increases the wind with that. So concerns locally here over the next couple hours. Again, what we're going to watch in the near term is this activity up towards Chicago. It's still northwest of town. That will kind of bubble its way down towards the south. You may, if you look up towards Chicago, look northwest right now, you'll probably see the big clouds. I know we've got the shield over us, but those clouds will continue to kind of bubble their way in our direction. And that, again, is going to be your heavy rain, hail, and perhaps some damaging wind threat. But I'm not too confident that those storms bubble their way in here. But that's the idea on the modeling, is that they kind of come in here. Of bigger concern would be this system out towards the west, which is an ongoing derecho right now. And as that heads through Iowa, we've still got some time to watch it. It'll eventually get into Illinois late this evening. And then we're talking, 11 o'clock is when we're really going to start to fine tune what it's going to do when it moves in. Could it weaken? We could see some weakening with it, but we could also see it hold together quite nicely. And the reason why is because there's plenty of instability out ahead of us. This isn't one of those situations where we don't have instability locally and we have it west. We have just as much as they do back towards Illinois. So my gut says this thing holds together, and I think we'll have some pretty decent storms. There could be wind damage producers later on this evening. And again, late this evening, like 11 o'clock, midnight 30, from there, 12:30 is what most people call it. But that's what we'll be watching this evening, okay? So next couple hours, we'll watch for bubble up storms. Those would be heavy rain producers. Bigger threat, though, I think, is this wind damage threat off towards the west. Final thing I want to show you here is the modeling. This is the HRRR model, which I have tended to lean towards in these kind of setups. It's got a good handle on where the derecho is now. You can see pretty good modeling there. It does have storms filling in here. This is what I was talking about in terms of the modeling, bubbling up storms over northwest Indiana over the next hour. We'll see if that happens. But the chance is there for that. And then you can see how those storms kind of continue. Here comes our storm in here right around. This is actually 1 a.m. So I think it's a little bit behind on that. It brings it through here with a little bit of a punch. But again, the models don't have a good handle on this setup. They don't tend to handle derechos very well. It doesn't look like it's lashing onto it very well. So again, midnight is when we're going to watch this, not 1 o'clock in the morning, not 2. And then it moves on out, and we should be severe weather clear after that. We'll have a little bit more stable of a day tomorrow with storms firing to the south, but we'll get into that when the time comes. So that is the immediate threat right now, is going to be really over the next 4 or 5 hours. We're going to watch that system come in from Iowa. That's the big threat. In the near term, we'll watch some of these storms as they potentially bubble their way down in the area. But those, I'm concerned that we could have a severe storm threat with those. But the bigger severe weather threat, I think, comes with this ongoing derecho as it continues in our direction later this evening. Okay. All right. So that's it. I see your comment on there. Dale says midnight 30. I dig it. That's great. All right. So if you guys have any questions with this, be happy to answer those. We'll likely bring you another update later on tonight as these storms get closer. Until then, it'll probably just be posts on the storms and all that as they continue to kind of bubble their way down. We'll talk about those. Melissa asked a good question. Is there a tornado possible? There would be a tornado threat with this. It'd be very low. I think the main threat's damaging winds. We've seen a couple instances where you get those quick spin up tornadoes on the leading edge of this. There's a big gush of air coming out, and it tends to form little eddies or little swirls on the sides as it moves. The tornado threat wouldn't be very high tonight, though. It would be more of a damaging wind threat. We did see a tornado warning as 2 cells merged up towards areas of northeastern Illinois. This is north of Chicago. I think it's Winnebago County. We saw 2 storms merge, and that formed a quick spin, and they had a tornado warning with that, but then it went away. So again, tornado threat, I'm not too huge on tonight. Could we see one? Sure. But is it going to be a huge threat for that? No, I don't think so in terms of that. Sherry, you're welcome for sure. Let's see. Chris asks, should I bring my patio furniture cushions in tonight? Chris, I would. Yeah, for the wind threat and the rain. I like to leave my patio cushions out because I think it washes them nicely. My wife disagrees, but we'll see. But yeah, I would bring them in. I'd probably bring in anything, that might blow around out there just in case. Are we all going to see damaging winds tonight? No. I mean, we got to be completely honest about that, right? This pattern is going to evolve. We'll see how these storms hold together. Models are no help, so we're kind of on our own for this. But I've seen this set up 100 times in my career, and this is usually how it goes: is that this will hold together in some capacity, and we'll be dealing with some kind of line of storms later on tonight that could likely be capable of some damaging winds around here. Okay. Marty, yeah, nothing big until midnight. What we're going to have to watch from now until midnight is this stuff coming out of Wisconsin and northern Illinois. These are more driven on outflow boundaries. So the storms put down a lot of rain and wind. That wind comes out. That's the gush of wind you feel in advance of a storm, and that creates new storms around it. So you notice, if you follow my mouse cursor here, notice how the main line of these storms formed right here. Now we've got storms up here and down here. That's why I think these will bubble into the area. And what I mean by bubbles, I mean they don't move directly. They kind of blossom and fall and blossom and fall. And it's on outflow boundaries. It's on the push of wind out in advance of that. So you can already see in northern Illinois, we're getting some movement down to the south with these. We'll probably in the next hour get more development just south of that. Chicago will probably be in it in about an hour. They'll probably get a storm that blossoms over them. And it's those that we'll watch come in. So I do think we, are going to see these move in before that main line moves in. But in terms of severe weather, I think the bigger risk is with this main line coming in. Can we rule out a severe storm out ahead of it? I can't, right? We could see some of these turn severe earlier this evening if they get here. But I think the main threat's going to be with that line. Hope that helps. Let's see. Someone asked what a derecho is, and Jody just explained it. I love it. Yeah, awesome. That's absolutely it. So bottom line, what a derecho is, it's just a classification for a cluster of storms. We see it not often, but probably 1 or 2 times a year we get a good one through the Midwest, maybe even more than that. We usually see about 1 a year here in the region. But what it is, it's just a big cluster of storms that forms along a heat boundary. So we've got lots of heat in the summertime in the plains. Storms like to go wherever the heat meets the cooler air, and that usually happens to be through the Great Lakes somewhere this time of year. And so sometimes you get not just thunderstorms that develop, but a whole system of storms. And that's what this is. This is a giant system. It's like a living, breathing organism that has its own cold front, its own low pressure system that just survives, and it'll keep going. And so derecho is when you have strong winds, damaging winds for many, many miles. There's criteria to it. And this has already surpassed that and will likely continue. So it's a big cluster of storms, produces damaging winds, and it travels for a lot of miles. And that's all this is. And they can pack a punch. If you haven't been through one, they can certainly pack a punch as they move in. Oftentimes it looks like a hurricane outside as they move through. We've had them in the mornings before. They usually develop in the plains, sometimes at night on the low-level jet, which is something else that we won't get into. But these storms can, travel in, and sometimes they've come through in the mornings here in the summertime. Summer's past, I remember some. And you wake up and the sky just gets darker and darker, and then you get that shelf cloud that moves in real fast. And the wind and the rain is just insane with these. It's amazing how strong these things can get. And then it's over like nothing happened, and the sun comes back out. So we'll see in terms of that. Haley, in terms of power outages, we'll have to wait and see. There's a potential for it if the winds stay strong within this. There's also potential that this thing kind of fans out a little bit and we get, 30, 40 mile per hour winds with this. There's no guarantee that we're going to get hit by this thing directly and it's going to be strong when it moves through, but the potential is there for that to happen later on tonight. Yeah, there should be good lightning with this, Kathy. There were over about an hour ago, I checked it. There were about 3,000 lightning strikes. That was within the state of Iowa. So that's a pretty big area. But there's some real decent lightning with this for sure. And it'll likely come with a shelf cloud. Not the stuff over the next 2 hours. That'll be a little different. I'm talking that main wall back towards Iowa that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Kodiak, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for joining us, buddy. I like your Facebook picture. Looks like you're having a good time there. Sarah, no guarantee that Lowell's going to get hit hard tonight. I do think we get some good rain. I think we can guarantee that. I've seen a couple questions on there asking about the rain. Ben's asking how much rain are we expecting? It depends. It doesn't fall evenly with thunderstorms. So, numbers are all over the board. In terms of the modeling, they go from anywhere from about a half an inch. I've seen some totals up to 3 inches. And I think the 3-inch totals are depending on that the storms to kind of bubble their way down and to sit with some heavy rain. 10, 11 o'clock, it would have heavy rain in here. And then that main line comes in with more heavy rain. So that's where we would get our 3-inch totals from this. I do think we all get rain tonight for sure. Let's see. Linda says, have doubts anything will come of this. Every time I check storm radar, it puts 1 hour further out. Linda, the reason why your storm radar keeps changing is because the computer models, the computers that are trying to make a forecast with this, have very little handle on the setup. Because it's extremely complicated. I can't emphasize that enough. Our computer models do a great job. The fact that we can see what kind of weather is coming 10 days out in a chaotic atmosphere that's always moving, that's insane. Okay. I hope you have an appreciation for forecasting to begin with. But that being said, computer models in this setup don't have a big understanding yet. There's not enough data in because these setups don't happen very often. There's not enough data in here on where these storms develop and how they go from there. And the other reasoning is because they kind of have a mind of their own in this setup, because boundaries can change, they can fluctuate. We're getting this cold front off the lake right now, which is going to put a boundary in towards Chicago. So how does that impact these storms? So that's why your model continues to change. I'm going to go the good old-fashioned meteorological trick called mathematics, and the storms are moving east around 60. And they're about 300 miles out. So that tells me they'll be here in about 5 hours. And that's this main line. The stuff to the north could get here sooner, though, and it would get here sooner if it bubbles its way down. But that's why your phone apps continue to change. And the forecast for the next 2 days is probably going to continue to change on your phone apps because it's the same setup where we have storms that develop. Wherever they end up the next day is where the next storms develop, right? So it's all contingent on what happens right now and over the next couple hours. That forecasts the next 3 days out. Once we get beyond Thursday night and Friday, our pattern changes and it's highly confident, predictable again. We have high pressure coming in. We've got an actual cold front next week. So everything becomes a little bit more predictable. This pattern is not predictable, and it's going to last another 2 days or so. Hope that helps. JK, I did. It was good. It was a good 4th. I had to work yesterday. That was okay, though. I was back to work. I had a staycation last week. We're going on vacation next week, so we're actually not going to have a lot of region weather posts. But anyway, in between, we have this week, and we've got some active weather. But it was a wonderful 4th. I hope you had a good one, too. I know the news across the country wasn't great, but I hope you and your family had a good time and found reason to appreciate our freedom around here. Hunter, you're welcome, buddy, for sure. Heather, you're welcome as well. Terry, pretty much the same for everyone in terms of, where we live. We're going to watch our storm threat increase over the next couple hours as these storms come south out of Chicago. And then we're going to really watch that line, that derecho back towards Iowa as that moves east. So we'll see. Well, that's a good question. Elijah's asking about hail for Valparaiso. I would put the odds probably around 30%, Elijah, for hail in Valpo. For storms tonight, I'd put them probably around 80 or 90. But in terms of hail, the hail part of this would probably come from what we're going to get if these storms come south out of Chicago. Those would produce some hail in spots, and the odds that it comes right over Valparaiso, I would put around 30%, but not zero for sure. Angie, that's a great question. So what's the atmosphere tomorrow look like after these storms hit? I think tomorrow's looking more stable. What typically happens when you have a very chaotic atmosphere that just explodes like we're having tonight? I mean, you can see we've got storms from Ohio all the way back towards Iowa, right? That's a large area that's getting some really powerful weather right now, right? So it's taken a lot of atmosphere juice to produce that. I think all this kind of sinks to the south tonight and tomorrow morning. So I think that pushes our boundary south, and I think most of the storms fire south of us tomorrow. And what I've seen in patterns that are like this in the past is that you get an active night like this where you have storms and lightning everywhere. The next day tends to be subdued because the atmosphere has to rebuild and readjust. So I think tomorrow is going to be much quieter as it looks right now. Mike, no, that's a good question. So the storms near Chicago, we did have a tornado warning. I think it was Winnebago County earlier. That was because two of those storms that you see kind of merged. They were both supercells. They merged and they formed a little spin just for a second, and then they kind of stopped the rotation. The tornado threat isn't big with those, but the problem is there's a warm frontal boundary there, and anytime you get storms that fire along a front, a warm front in particular, you tend to get a change of wind direction on that front, and that can tend to spin things up. So there is a low tornado risk with those storms coming out of Chicago, and that's what we talked about earlier. If they make their way into Northwest Indiana, there would be a low tornado risk for those as well. And I mean low. That doesn't mean you're going to see a tornado. It doesn't even mean we get a warning out of it, but there's still a risk that we have to talk about with that. Kathy, I think so. I really think our grass is going to recover. If you remember, gosh, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this drought, and I said usually in early July, usually that first week of July, we get some decent storms around here. Sometimes they come on 4th of July, sometimes they don't. This is what I was talking about. The pattern has predictably done what it's done almost every year in terms of this week. We tend to get some kind of thunderstorm action, which lasts for several days, and that's what we're seeing. If we can crank out some good rain tonight, we have another chance for some good rain with the frontal passage either Thursday or Friday, depending on when it passes. I think our grass could come back green, at least for a little bit. So there you go. Yeah, for sure, Lance. I see your comment there. Yeah, for sure. I know. We need some rain. We're mowing brown grass right now as it looks right now. Yeah, Skylar, I think we get a nice break tomorrow. I really do. We could still have some rain around, but overall, I think tomorrow's going to be quieter than today in terms of the storm front. Adam, I like your comment for sure. It gonna rain. It gonna rain. All right. So I think that's about it. I see some questions coming in. A couple of you just joined asking about your different cities. Everyone's the same tonight, so it's no different for your city and the region than anyone else. So final recap. We're going to do another one of these later tonight as these storms approach, okay? Just to keep everyone up to date. But I just want to give you a heads up. We're watching two things right now. The storms out of Illinois, which you see right up here. These are kind of bubbling their way down to the south on outflow boundaries. So we're likely to pop some rain, probably an hour out, maybe an hour and a half out. If it were to make its way down, we'll pop some storms overhead. Heavy rain's a threat with those. Damaging winds, hail is a threat with those as well. But I'm not seeing a huge severe threat from the stuff over the next hour or two that develops. The bigger threat would come from this, which is a derecho. It's been producing damaging winds for hundreds of miles back towards the west. This has aim at Northwest Indiana, and just doing some simple math, it would get in here probably around midnight-ish, depending on the speed. I do think it speeds up, so that's why I'm saying midnight. If you were to do the math on it, it'd be about 12:30, but we'll say midnight. And that will be the line of storms that could have some damaging winds with it, as it's already shown. We'll see how that holds together. But again, until then, we could be dealing with some more storms out in advance of that. But I really think that's going to be the big threat. Okay. All right. So that's what I've got in terms of forecasting. Join us again later tonight. Again, we'll go live as these storms get a little bit closer. But I hope that helps kind of help you make your evening plans, because I know there's a lot going on in the summertime, and there's a lot of, I don't know, chitter chatter around, these storms going to produce tornadoes tonight and all that stuff. I hope that helps. There's no guaranteed tornado threat with this. There's not even a guaranteed severe weather threat with this. But if I were a betting man, I would say we do have some strong storms that would produce some damaging winds later on tonight, especially with that line coming in. So we'll keep you updated on that. We still have some time. Okay. All right, guys, be safe and stay tuned, because we'll have another